Welcome to the Humanitarian Supply Chain Podcast, the first and only show that actually compares humanitarian aid and private sector supply chains using real cases, real field experience, and the kind of stories you'll never hear in a boardroom. If you are here for honest insights, field stories, and a few laughs at the beautiful mess we call supply chain, hit subscribe, keep listening, and leave a comment. Let's get started. I want to start with two images. Hold both of them in your mind at once. The first, a car factory in post war Japan. Workers moving with quiet precision. Tools laid out in exactly the right places. No clutter, no wasted motion. Every step in every process thought through and written down. A place where efficiency isn't just a goal, it's a discipline, almost a philosophy. The second, a warehouse in Nairobi. Volunteers moving fast, maybe too fast. Because outside this building, there are families who just lost everything to a flood. They need emergency kits now. But the supplies are everywhere. Boxes stacked wrong, labels missing, medicines near the expiry date mixed in with the fresh stock. Every second spent searching is a second someone doesn't have. Two worlds, one problem. How do you create order under pressure? How do you build a system that works not just today, but the next time and the time after that? The answer, it turns out, was developed in Japan in the 1950s. It's called 5S. And today we are going to trace its journey from the Toyota production line to the earthquake zones of Turkey, from a pharmacy in Maiduguri to a factory floor in India, to understand why a methodology born in manufacturing might be one of the most powerful tools in humanitarian aid. I'm Irina Lukyanova. This is Humanitarian Supply Chain Podcast. To understand 5S, you have to understand the moment it was born. Japan in early 1950s was a country rebuilding itself from ruin. The war had devastated infrastructure and industry resources. There was no room for waste, not a scrap of material, not a minute of labor. Out of that necessity, a new way of thinking about work emerged. At Toyota, the engineer named Teiichi Ono was wrestling with a fundamental question: how do you make more with less? His answer became known as the Toyota production system, what the world would later call lean manufacturing. At its heart was the relentless elimination of waste. Wasted transport, wasted inventory, wasted motion, wasted waiting, wasted overproduction, wasted overprocessing, wasted defects. 5S was the practical daily foundation of that system. Five Japanese words: seiri, seiton, seiso, seiketsu, Shitsuke, translated as sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. Together, they described a way of organizing any workspace so that what you need was always where you expected it, always in good condition, and always maintained. What Ono understood, and what we are still learning in humanitarian logistics decades later, is that waste isn't just an economic problem. In environments where speed matters, where the margin for errors is thin, waste skills. Literally, in some cases. That's what makes 5S more than a manufacturing trick. It's a philosophy, one that turns out to be just as relevant in a disaster response as it is on assembly line. Before we get into the stories, let me give you the framework, because 5S is one of those things that sounds simple, maybe too simple, until you see what happens when you actually apply it rigorously. Sort. The first S, Seri, sort. Remove everything from your workspace that doesn't belong there. In a humanitarian warehouse, this means expired medicines go, broken equipment goes, supplies that belong to a different program, a different region, a different crisis, they go. What's left is only what you actually need right now for the mission at hand. Think about your kitchen junk drawer. The one with the batteries, the menus from a restaurant that was closed 3 years ago, and the mystery key. Now imagine trying to find a working pen in the drawer while someone is standing in your doorway asking for help. That's what an unsorted humanitarian warehouse feels like. Sorting isn't tidying up, it's a strategic act, the first attack on waste. The second S, say tone, set in order. Once you know what belongs, give everything specific, logical home. During a disaster response in the Philippines, relief workers color coded bins, food in one color, water in another, medical supplies in a third. Maps on the walls showed volunteers exactly where to go. Packing time was cut in half, not because people worked faster, but because they stopped wasting time searching. In a factory, this is the shadow board, a panel on the wall with the outline of every tool. So if a wrench is missing, the empty silhouette tells you immediately. The absence becomes visible. That's the power of set in order. You do not just know where things are, you know instantly when something is wrong. The third S, say so, shine. Keep the workspace clean and use cleaning as an inspection. In a field hospital, daily cleaning isn't bureaucratic box ticking. It's infection prevention, it's equipment maintenance, it's the act of looking closely enough at a space to notice when something is starting to go wrong before it fails completely. In manufacturing, the same logic applies. A clean machine is a machine you're paying attention to. Shine is about pride and prevention, and it's everyone's responsibility, from the manager to the newest volunteer. The fourth S, Seiketsu, standardize. Create systems, checklists, templates, visual tools so the first three S don't depend on one person's memory or good intentions. NGOs use standardized checklists for packing emergency kits. Retailers standardize shelf layouts so a new employee in any store can find anything within minutes. Standardization means that when the experienced team member goes home, the system still works. When a crisis brings in 100 new volunteers, the system still works. You're not hoping, you're building reliability into the process itself. The fifth S, Shitsuke, sustain. Make all of this a habit, not a project. This is the hardest one. Any team can do a 5S blitz. Spend a weekend cleaning and organizing, feel great about it, and then slide back into the old ways within 3 weeks. Sustain is about resisting that slide. Regular audits, ongoing trainings, a culture where the standard is maintained not because someone is watching, but because the team has internalized why it matters. Think of it like brushing your teeth. Doing it once isn't enough. 5S only works if it becomes part of the routine, the daily discipline that stops problems before they start. Now let's see what this looks like when the stakes are real. February 2023, a catastrophic earthquake strikes southeastern Turkey and northern Syria. Buildings collapse, roads crack open, entire cities are rendered inaccessible. And into that chaos, logistics teams have to move fast, coherently, and without wasting a single resource. Kühne local teams were on the ground within hours, and the framework they brought with them, whether they called it 5S or not, was exactly this methodology in action. Sort. Before any aid could move, they had to sort through information. Which roads were passable, which airports were operational, where were the bottlenecks, and where was the most urgent needs. In a disaster, the first task is always to separate the signal from the noise. Set in order. Detailed maps were created, not just of geography, but of logistics. Warehouses were organized so incoming goods could be received, stored, and dispatched without the shipment of one organization blocking the corridor of another. Shine. Every warehouse was kept clear, well lit, safety navigated. Every shipment tracked, every document checked, every handoff recorded. In a crisis, it's tempting to skip the paperwork. Standardized. Best practice guides, checklists, and templates were created and shared across partners, NGOs, governmental organizations, and other logistic providers. Because in a multi organization response, you need everyone working from the same playbook, or you get chaos dressed up as coordination. Sustain regular coordination calls with the logistic cluster, training for new staff and volunteers as they arrived. Lessons learned captured, not just experienced and forgotten. The result? Thousands of tons of aid moved to affected communities, delays minimized, resources used efficiently, aid reaching people faster than it would have in the absence of this discipline. That's what 5S looks like at a scale. In a crisis under pressure, it's not luxury, it's the infrastructure that makes everything else possible. And now I want to spend some time on a story that's personal to me because I was there in Maiduguri, Nigeria, a city facing compounding humanitarian challenges, and a task that seemed frankly impossible established a fully functional pharmacy for action against hunger. In a disorganized warehouse with medicines arriving in less than 2 months. The stakes weren't absent or abstract. The health and lives of countless people depended on getting that right. Before a single shelf could be built, we had to make a critical choice. Where? The Ministry of Health offered free space. It sounded like a gift, but when we evaluated it honestly, the distance from our office, the lack of climate control infrastructure, the communication barriers it would create, we had to sort through that offer and decline it. Free isn't free if it makes your operation unworkable. Instead, we chose a 129.81 square meter warehouse within our own compound, large enough for two incoming trucks, 20 tons of medicines, with room for future deliveries. Closer, controllable, strategic. That's what sort looks like in the real world. Not just clearing clutter from shelves, but clearing confusion from decision making, identifying what serves the mission, setting aside what doesn't. The next one was set in order, building the system before the medicines arrived. Once the location was chosen, the real work began. Existing items were moved to an off site warehouse. The space was sanitized, a ceiling was installed, doors were reinforced, the walls were painted light colored enamel, specifically to minimize heat absorption in Maiduguri's brutal climate. Equipment procurement ran in parallel with renovation. Metal shelving units, air conditioning, wooden pallets to keep supplies off the floor, office furniture for the pharmacy supervisor. When the medicines finally arrived, two 20-ton trucks, the warehouse manager, it was me, and the pharmacy supervisor, Mayova, coordinated the entire offloading in a single day. Drugs arranged alphabetically, then by pharmacological purpose, ALs created for easy access, bin cards and stock cards implemented for documentation from day one. This is set in order, not just organizing what exists, but designing a system for everything that comes in, building for efficiency before you need it. In Maiduguri's heat, maintaining proper storage conditions wasn't optional. It was survival for the medicines and for the people who would need them. The team repurposed an old generator to power the air conditioning until a larger one arrived. An LCD temperature and humidity meter was installed with readings taken 3 times daily. Temperature and humidity cards maintained consistent records. The pharmacy was cleaned daily with Dettol, water, and soap. And here's the thing about Shine that I want you to hold on to. It's not about appearance, it's about trust. A pharmacy that looks clean and is properly maintained sends a signal to the team working in it, to the health workers receiving medicines from it, to the communities depending on it. Discipline, visible and daily, builds confidence in the system. Administrative systems went in alongside physical organization. Folders for supply request orders, delivery notes, stock cards, a separate stock follow up system for tracking medicine dispatches, detailed receipt reports for financial accountability. Every medicine tracked with bin cards and budget codes. Every dispatch recorded. Financial reports sent to headquarters for supplier payment processing. Why does this matter? Because a system that lives only in one person's head isn't a system, it's a dependency. Standardization means that when the pharmacy supervisor is sick or transferred to another base or the team scales up in response to a new crisis, the operation continues. The knowledge is in the process, not just in the person. Then we move to sustain bi-weekly cleaning routines, leadership support that enabled fast decisions when the situation required it. Despite the time pressure, despite the infrastructure limitations, despite everything that could have gone wrong, the pharmacy met international standards. And when I look back, I think that the reason is this: the team didn't treat 5S as a set of rules imposed from outside. They understood why it mattered, they owned it. Anything is possible when you have a team that believes in what they are building. Now let's step out of humanitarian logistics entirely and into a polypropylene bag factory in India. Because 5S doesn't belong to any one sector, and seeing it work in a completely different context shows you just how universal these principles really are. Harsh Polymers was a small manufacturer facing problems familiar to small manufacturers everywhere: cluttered workstations, lost time, accidents, low productivity, and a general sense that things could be better if only someone knew how to fix them. The problems were concrete: scrap cutbacks, waste bobbins, broken parts, It took up valuable floor space. Workers spent up to 25% of their time searching for tools and materials. Useful storage was blocked by things that shouldn't have been there at all. Then the sort phase began with red tagging, a simple and powerful tool. Any item that wasn't needed was tagged, and then everything tagged was moved to a designated scrapyard near the entrance. For the first time, the factory floor was legible. You could see what was there and why. Set in order followed. Baskets, robins, and loom wheels sorted by size. Fittings grouped by category. Tools and raw materials placed in clearly marked racks. The 25% of time previously spent searching nearly eliminated. Shine happened alongside sort. Every rack emptied and scrubbed. The floor swept. Maintenance task tackled. A leaking air conditioner pipe fixed. Problems that had been invisible under the clutter suddenly became obvious. Standardized introduced audit sheets, clear instructions, and visual management. Photographs documented before and after states. Audit scores were displayed. Employees were given zone wise responsibility, specific areas they personally maintained. And sustain meant ongoing training, communication, and leadership by example. Managers on the factory floor, following the same standards they asked of everyone else. The changes were visible and measurable. Productivity up, space utilized better, fewer accidents, higher moral, fewer defects, and something harder to quantify but perhaps most important, a cultural shift. Workers took pride in their environment. 5S stopped being something management had imposed and became something the team owned. Before 5S, the factory was cluttered, chaotic, and inefficient. After, it was orderly, effective, and a source of pride for everyone who worked there. The tools that made it real, red tagging, audit sheets, visual management, zone responsibilities, didn't require significant investments. They required commitment. That's the recurring lesson. 5S doesn't demand expensive technology, it demands discipline. Before we wrap up, I want to make this practical because 5S isn't a concept you watch from a distance. It's something you can use wherever you work. Start with sort. Look at your workspace, your desk, your storeroom, your email inbox. What's there that doesn't belong? What are you working around every day without realizing it? Name it, remove it. You'll feel the difference immediately. Set things in order. What do you reach for constantly? Is it where you'd expect to find it? Design your workspace for the workflow you actually have, not the one you started with 3 years ago. Shine. Keep things clean enough that you'd notice when something is wrong. In physical spaces, that means regular cleaning. In data and documentation, it means regular audits. The act of paying close attention prevents problems. Standardize. If a process works, write it down. Share it. Make it as a template. The knowledge you carry in your head is fragile. A system is resilient. And sustain. Review, adapt, keep improving. Not because someone is auditing you, but because you understand why it matters and because you've seen what happens when the discipline slips. And that's all for today's episode of the Humanitarian Supply Chain podcast. I'm Irina Lukyanova, and thank you for joining me. I hope this gave you both a new lens on a classic methodology and a few practical ideas you can take back to your own work. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who cares about how organizations work and how they could work better. Your support keeps this conversation going. If you have questions, story or ideas, or experienced already 5S in the field or in your work, find me on social media or send me an email. I genuinely love to hear from you. Till the next time, bye.